everybody. We're going to get started here now. So hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Ashley Hammond, and I'm the Regional Coordinator for MentorAbility in Newfoundland and Prince Edward Island. My colleague Marcus Jamieson is not with us today. However, he's the Regional Coordinator for MentorAbility in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. And together we make up MentorAbility Atlantic Canada. Before we get started, I just want to quickly highlight a couple of housekeeping items. So today's webinar is scheduled to run for about 1.5 hours. If we have time at the end, we will be giving everybody some time to ask questions. However, we are encouraging you to use the chat feature at the bottom of the Zoom screen there to ask your question during the webinar. I'll be monitoring it, so you can just type your question and I'll let Sean know that there's a question there for him. If you prefer to ask your question verbally, you can let us know using the same chat feature and I can unmute you as well. And without any further delay, I'd like to introduce today's guest speaker, Sean Wiltshire. So Sean has been working with organizations to help them diversify and increase innovation for almost 30 years. Sean's the founding president of the Canadian Association for Supported Employment, which is known as CASE. And he's also the Chief Executive Officer of Avalon Employment here in Newfoundland and Labrador. He's piloted several new supported employment programs and initiatives throughout Canada and also Southeast Asia. So Sean, thank you very much for joining us today. We're very excited to have you.
Thanks for having me, Ashley. It's great to see everybody. Although you guys can see me, I can't see you. I'm coming to you from my trailer. I'm on vacation. So I'm having a break today in the nice air conditioning. So I'm delighted to be able to spend some time with everybody and have a conversation about what's going on related to the labor market in these crazy new times that we're living. So Ashley, is there anything else, or do you just want me to get started, or?
I think we're good to go, Sean, whenever you're ready.
All right, I will turn off my video just so that I can concentrate on the screen and not see a little 2-inch version of myself. So I'll be back when we're done and we can have a conversation. So I think that really everybody can kind of look at the first slide and say, you know, 2020 has been a real bang up year so far. It has challenged us in ways that many of us never expected. It has challenged us in ways that many of us never imagined. And what was impossible to think about 10 weeks ago is now the new normal. So I think that today what I want to talk about is, part of it is COVID-19, but other parts of it is opportunities and challenges that are being presented related to COVID, related to the pandemic and how people are responding. It's really confusing. Let's put that right out there, that, you know, let's make this a little bit more understandable from a labor market point of view. We are in a time now where the fluidity of the economy is moving all the time, depending on what province you're in, depending on what level of reopening you're at, depending on what industry you're in. All of those things are compounded by individual provinces and municipalities having different regulations. As you can see in Ontario, they were hesitant to have more regions, and they struggled with the ability to reopen portions of Ontario that had no cases, but really struggled with Toronto because people could literally go across the street to the next municipal area and services would be offered. So there's a lot going on, and I think that the key here is people have good information and to have an understanding of how it reflects, how their response can affect their ability to find employment during a pandemic. I think the first thing we have to look at is what does this really look like? Because when you start talking about millions of people losing their jobs, or the percentage of unemployment, what percentage? We often rate the health of the economy on the unemployment rate. But one of the things that we have to remember is that after every recession, the last thing to respond would be the unemployment rate. So if you look at the slide here, the economy lost 1.9 million jobs in April. The unemployment rate rose to 13%. Now, there are some studies that are telling us that the unemployment rate, if you consider the people who are still getting paid but not doing their regular job or not doing it fully, the unemployment rate would probably be 27%. Now, those numbers really can frighten people, but again, we have to look at it over the course of the pandemic as well as over the course of the quarter and the year, so that we see whether the response and the ability of business to rebound from the pandemic, whether that response will be a V curve, so very sharp response and recovery, a check mark, which is a longer period of time to have a recovery, and of course, whether it might be a U. So right now we're seeing more of a check mark because it is taking longer, it is going on longer than expected, and the ability for businesses to respond to the new social distancing or sanitization rules are challenged because they're new. But if you looked at it and said, what does it look like? And this is what we really sort of, to give you some context of how many people are unemployed. So the first thing I want to say to people is don't panic, because we have to remember that you, along with 2 million other Canadians and millions of more, whether you were quarantined, isolated, working from home, part-time, full-time, we responded as both a community and as a country. And we have to remember that there are things that we can do. Many Canadians have lost their unemployment, so you are not alone. That is important to remember, because the response of a community will be for the whole community. And whether that be the increase in new employment or people going back to their old jobs, there are benefits for you to apply for. And that had evolved very quickly. I think people can remember in the beginning that the original CERB benefit was only going to be a particular number of people. But then the people most affected by the pandemic, whether that be the gig economy, whether that be people involved in television or people involved in tourism, summer stores and employment opportunities that happen around tourism in both rural and urban parts. So when that happened, we saw the response get larger. Government was looking at more of a tide you over. So there are benefits that you can apply for. Now, what is disappointing is that the CERB, which the government considers the bare minimum, is still more than many disability pensions or disability support programs. So that is disturbing, and it is one that we always have to keep forefront when we talk about what are some of the challenges. Things are fluid, and as you see, the information changes almost daily. In the beginning, it was changing hourly. I encourage everybody to go to the federal government of Canada website COVID-19 response page to see what's available. It's updated regularly, and it allows you to apply from a business to an individual. What are the things that you need to have? What are the circumstances around your particular individual case, and how might that fit within the benefits and programs that are offered? And remember, your experience is valuable. If you lost your job to the pandemic and to the shutdown, you had skills. Those don't go away. Remember that the response by the community of how the economy reopens means, while that many people will be going back to work, there will be challenges for some people, whether it be that they have a compromised immune system, their workplace maybe won't be reopening with as many staff, they'll have reduced hours. So this is where we have to focus back on, we do have skills, we've had them, and we need to focus on the ones that the experiences that you've had, so that we make sure we don't forget that we do have the ability to take what we've learned and move forward. So experience is valuable, and you had that before the pandemic if you lost your job. So this is a really good slide because it talks a little bit about how people are responding. you can see there 81% of business owners have been negatively impacted. That is a massive amount of the economy. 54% have had sales drops. Now, the important figure here is the very bottom. This is from CIBC, and it's fairly accurate because they continue to do the poll. 76% of businesses are confident they will rebound after the crisis. So this tells us that the confidence in both the response of the government, the shutdown, and the ability of organizations and businesses to respond is high. So what we have to do here is we have to ensure that we're ready when work is coming our way or when businesses are ready to reopen. So when I'm having conversations here today, I'm talking to two sets of people. I'm talking to some folks that maybe lost their job in the pandemic and are interested in where are they going to work and what are the new opportunities. But I'm also talking to those organizations across the country that support individuals and giving hopefully you some additional tools for your toolbox that will allow you to both engage with employers and demonstrate the value of that diversity within the workforce. But you've always got to try and be up to date on how people are feeling about the response, because it's easy for us to be concerned and to go down the road of we don't know where we're going to be. We don't know what recovery looks like. Those are concerns, but if we focus on the where we're going versus where we are, I think we'll be in a better situation. Because today, we're lucky to live that, there's 267 new cases yesterday in Canada. I think there was 35,000 in the United States. So our ability to respond is going to be quicker than maybe some other countries. This is another reason why I don't want people to panic. This is an immigration slide from the National Immigration Center and the Conference Board of Canada. While we do have a pandemic, while we do have 2 million people out of work, we are continuing to have labor challenges across the country in different areas, whether that be the North, whether that be in manufacturing, whether that be in rural farming. So we do know that 5 million Canadians are set to retire within the next 15 years. So while we have a pandemic response for unemployment that is current, we also have to look at planning and long term. I think people will notice today that there are a couple of articles, both in the Globe and Mail and on CBC, talking about individual provinces and unions talking to government about retraining, about offering opportunities for new employment, maybe related to the services offered during the pandemic. But new employment, new individuals, new communities are emerging and will continue to emerge. So because we have a low fertility rate, because we have 5 million Canadians set to retire, and because we have a population that's going to be 1/4 over the age of 65, from a long-term perspective, we require planning to ensure that we have enough of a response to the labor market need. We're filling the jobs that people are being asked to fill, and that we don't train for employment that doesn't exist. I often say to people, Sean, they say to me, Sean, what's the job of the future? And I go, well, you've got to have good information. I'd like to talk to the career counselor that told people they should go in to be a Beta Max repairman and, the Blu-ray disc and even compact discs. So we've got to try and stay ahead and alongside the technology, as well as understand that as the labor market shrinks over the next 15 years, opportunities will not only be available, but opportunities that look different after a pandemic and how we look at the world of work. What was impossible just 3 months ago is now normal. Think of all the meetings that you've had, the conversations you've had on Zoom, the individuals you may have supported, and you did it virtually or you did it from a very different place. It is not your normal response, but you managed. What people said could not be done, all of a sudden, in just a couple of weeks, became the new normal.
Hey,
You
Sean,
can do things. Yep.
we have our first question.
Sure, go ahead.
So Trevor asked, can you speak about online jobs? Do you see this sector growing? I would like to focus in on getting my clients online remote work if possible.
Right. So there's a couple of areas there, Trevor, that are going to be expanding. One is online because working at home now is an asset. Um, the ability. I'm also going to say that call centers. Now, people have said to me, "Well, Sean, a call center is not a great job," and I've always had to disagree and go, "Are they paying labor standards wages? Do you have benefits? Are you accommodated and supported at work?" Call centers aren't about always calling out. You may be receiving the call and you may do it at home or you may do it at an office. So those things, as we, think of, Amazon and the ability to order packages on the internet. Think of all the services that we would once go somewhere to get, now have to go virtual. And so those ability to be able to answer a phone and talk to somebody is a growing industry, and there's several more I'll talk to. But when we consider what was normal and what's now possible, this is the opportunity section. Because you're right, Trevor. If we have the opportunity to give people a job that might be 20, 30, or 40 hours from their house, which is where we've all worked for the last 15 weeks, then that possibility opens up a lot of doors. So it's now, people often ask me, is it's now a question of profit, people taking profit or businesses trying to profit off the pandemic? Well, for most people, I would say no. This is a question of survival for many businesses, and many will not survive. But out of the room will come new opportunities, and those are the ones we'd like to try and focus on. New times call for new solutions across the country, and in response to how communities have been shut down and what they will do as they reopen. Businesses are having to be more innovative than ever before. We saw that with the sidewalk delivery, contactless payment, ordering through plexiglass. It has become innovative beyond words, and people have responded because they knew that their business survival meant they had to. Selling the skill versus the disability. This is something I've preached for years. Whether you're a service provider or an individual, always sell your skill first. The disability is part of who you are, it's not who you are. So we're always trying to demonstrate that what we're looking for is a match with the employer's required job and the individual's present skills. So you're selling your skills versus the fact that you need to work from home. You have the ability to do the job. You're just going to work from home like everybody else. The fact that you use a wheelchair or you might have a hearing issue, those issues are irrelevant if you're able to do the job. So focus on the skill, not the barrier. New employees are going to be needed in many industries, and I'll talk about the new industries emerging through the pandemic in just a couple of minutes. The ability to work from home, as I said, is now an asset. So Trevor, when he pointed out that this is a growing area he'd like to focus on for his individuals, he's absolutely right, because the ability of individuals to be participating in employment is greater when they're going to have the opportunity not to leave their house. Now, there is a challenge. People who have disabilities are socially isolated on a good day. During the pandemic, many people felt what social isolation really is for many communities that are marginalized. So that uncomfortable feeling of being alone and not knowing and not having someone to share, those are challenges when you work from home. So there has to be processes to engage both in the social aspects of work as well as the actual employment of the individual. So I always put it there as a caution. Working from home is great until you have nobody to talk to other than the people you're working for. So, your service. And even though we are coming out of a pandemic and people need new employees, the hiring of a person with a disability, a new Canadian, a new immigrant, an older worker will still be a first for many businesses. So that fear still exists. They will have reservations. They may have concerns about the ability of an individual to complete the productivity at home, thinking that because they have a disability, they can't work at the same pace. It's okay. Part of the role of the service provider here is to engage with the employer and to support the individual to make those accomplishments reality. It's supporting the employer to understand that expectations for all employees should be the same, and they should be no lower for an individual with a disability and no higher for people without a disability. There are jobs out there, and this is just one example. Which industry saw an upswing in the business during the highest level of the pandemic? I guess a lot of you kind of already know. You'll never believe where there was job growth. Toilet paper. But it wasn't actual toilet paper. There was job growth in the manufacture, production, sale, and shipping of bidets, which for anybody who doesn't know is what you use instead of toilet paper very often in Asia and many other countries. Because there was a pandemic and a shortage of toilet paper, which nobody understands, panic buying, but there was an increase in sales, and there was actually new hiring, new production. So when people say there was no upswing in businesses, many industries saw an increase. You only have to look at Uber Eats. You only have to look at online shopping, Amazon. Somebody said that, Jeff Bezos of Amazon is on track to be the world's first trillionaire and has made hundreds of millions of dollars because we couldn't go out and shop. So there's also something new that we're seeing across the country. This is very interesting because it's the essential services economy. Something we kind of knew existed, but it was more those days that you had a holiday. Those were the stores that were open, but that was okay because tomorrow everything will be back to normal. What none of us predicted was that the essential services economy would be the ability of people to be able to say, a job during the pandemic is vital. The essential services economy was growing at a rate that we never expected because we never expected all the services to be able to be provided. And that's how innovation was built. You think about your favorite restaurant, maybe in your home community, that you always went to, but now all of a sudden could only have takeout. You think of all the restaurants and the people that were laid off and how kitchens and business owners are trying to survive. So what was essential? Drugstores, supermarkets, some restaurants, home hardware stores. It also depended again on what province you were in and what level you were at for your reopening. So new economic models are being imagined and implemented every single day. We cannot believe the new models. Let's only look at the fact that in Newfoundland and Labrador, the Liquor Corporation stopped making vodka and they started making hand sanitizer. Now, while that may have been a response, the retooling of industry to respond to requirements of the pandemic is a business opportunity all the same. Pandemics demonstrated the need for essential workers. What I find funny is that we glorified sports heroes, politicians, people that we looked up to. And at the end of the day, the person that saved your life was the person who worked at Sobeys, the person who worked at the convenience store, the person who baked your bread. The sports star was no good, and the politician could only tell you what they were trying to do. You had to look to the people who actually served you, those wage earners that are often lower level wages, lack of benefits. Those were the people who saved the country actually from going into a panic. As
Hey,
long
Sean.
as the supermarket, yep.
So we have another comment.
Sure.
Michelle said, just a note, have to say, employers are related to the sales employers not related to the sales delivery service are also now more readily agreeable to work from home accommodation, whereas pre-COVID, they never would have agreed to it. Insurance is one of those sectors, but not only. And
that's a great point, because it really is, like, just think about the fact, who thought you yourself would work from home for 15 weeks, and how that has impacted both your productivity and the kind of blending and blurring of the lines between work and home. People told me they found they were more productive. Now, this is, again, keeping in mind, if you've got kids at home and you're trying to work, that's pandemonium, not pandemic, that's pandemonium. But if you're able to have a space and to be able to work from home in some quietness, then you're probably more productive. You're probably able to get things done. Those are things that people are discovering, because rather than pop into somebody's office and interrupt them to ask them a question, now I have to think about it and write them an email. So it is different, right? So, but the pandemic demonstrated the need for essential workers. And we only have to look at the fact that, you know, Sobeys and Loblaws instituted a $2 premium during the pandemic.
Sean, sorry to interrupt you again.
Yep.
Some of your words are a little bit, it's coming across a bit crackly. So
Okay.
if are you able to use your mic?
Sure, let me see if it works.
Okay.
Is that better?
Say something again, sorry.
How's that? Is that a better reception?
Yes, that sounds a bit clearer. Does that sound better to you, Nadine? You can keep going, Sean, and I'll let you know if it still sounds a little bit crackly.
Okay, perfect. So the pandemic demonstrated the need for essential workers, and those workers will be increasing. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the industries in just a minute. So the need for increased wages and job benefits for the essential services economy workers is high on the list. So if it's an area you're thinking about looking for employment, over the coming months and maybe 24 months, you're going to see increases in wages and benefits for these sectors. So it is a growing area and one that will see wage increases. And we've also had a gain of nearly 290,000 jobs in May. So if you consider 2 million people lost their job, 300,000 have already gone back to work in May. We are waiting on new statistics from June, but as you can see, it's an opportunity that we know people will be going back to work. How do we include individuals with disabilities in that? So where are the jobs? Well, manufacturing has seen a very big increase, and it's not only in the manufacture of PPE, it's in the manufacturing processes themselves. So usually factories, assembly lines are requiring people to both sanitize and clean, as well as new product lines. The associated cleaning and sanitation has become an industry unto itself. Now, while this may not be a permanent situation given COVID, it is one that could go on for quite a while. I think you will see cleaning and sanitation continue to be high on the priority list of businesses. While this pandemic may end in a year, we could be looking at others, and this is the understanding that we should have around cleaning and sanitation, even from just a general health perspective. So there's lots of new jobs there. We've also seen some surprise in the uptake in construction and the associated support jobs for those industries. So construction that had been shut down has ramped up again. Now, while some of that is expected due to the time of year, the associated support jobs are also seeing a large increase. So there is still a bit of a building boom in some parts of the country related to both new infrastructure, buildings, apartments. I know what is down is new housing starts, but in other areas, buildings are being, production of construction has increased. Frontline health care, frontline health. So long-term care. There you have seen what has been both a very disheartening and challenging time in the long-term care system in Canada. What you will see, I think, are going to be a couple of things. You will see a response at both a provincial and a national level to seniors and long-term care. You'll see a big investment in home care, and you'll see less warehousing of seniors, whether that be in seniors' homes, private or private-public partnerships. You will see more models that are not for profit, so that they're geared towards supporting individuals. And I think out of the inquiries in Quebec and Ontario, you may see long-term care become part of provincial health programming. So from the perspective of new employment, opportunities in the long-term care field, and again, let us not forget that we're going to have 1/4 of our population over the age of 65. And 65 is the new 40, 70 is the new 60. So as people live longer and as people enjoy their lives more when they retire, long-term care and what it looks like are going to be very different. People will want to be staying in their own homes, and the opportunities for any kind of programming support to geriatrics are going to increase. Frontline retail. Now, this is pandemic specific, and what I would say there is just the increase in people building businesses around contactless delivery and sidewalk service. Who would have thought you'd go pick up a pizza and not enter the store, or you would buy a pair of shoes, or you would buy a can of paint and never talk to anybody but a computer? So these are new responses. One of the things that has amazed me, young people are getting jobs, they are shoppers. Now, you can do this one of two ways. You can be a shopper independently and work with an online app, or you can actually work for the grocery store. I know Loblaws employs many young individuals, and what they do for 6 hours is shop for other people. Their pickup service has been overwhelmed, and the demand for those young people has been increasing across the country. For a small fee that many people feel is reasonable, you can have actually somebody pick up everything and deliver it to your car. So you don't even have to touch it. So these are some new areas from a perspective of entry-level employment, great ability to build confidence, build skills, and maybe, something to build on your resume. Delivery. This is something that's really interesting. We all loved Uber Eats, food, DoorDash, Food Express. But here's the thing. Most businesses that were using these organizations to deliver the food had the ability to make other revenue inside the restaurant through other sources. When the pandemic struck and restaurants were forced to just use Uber Eats, the fees that they were charging were sometimes as high as 30% for the same food that you could probably go down the street and pick up yourself. So while you may have said shop local, I'm using Uber Eats for the pizza joint probably lost 30%. So in Toronto, there was a small revolt that has gained some good momentum to fight back against Uber Eats, not only around the support of their drivers and support of what people get paid, but around the fees that businesses have to pay to be part of it. Because when you're losing a lot of your business to the pandemic and your only source of income is delivery, and then you're being gouged on a delivery that you probably last month looked at as a bonus because you were making more money from inside the restaurant. So there's some changes and some new opportunities people are seeing in the economy related both to the pandemic and the response that people have had. And large facilities supporting basic needs. And I'm not so much talking about supermarkets, I'm talking about warehouses, whether that be Amazon or other facilities that are doing large scale distribution and distribution of basic needs. So those food distributors, maybe it's not the supermarket you work for, maybe it's the food distributor that services the supermarket. So there are, again, opportunities related to how people are responding. So there are some opportunities and challenges. So it's ensuring inclusive hiring practices for those service providers. It's explaining to employers that engagement of a diverse workforce is a productivity dream, and giving the opportunity for somebody to solve a problem that you may not be able to because they have different experience is what innovation is all about. You've got to investigate programs that support hiring. So whether that be a wage subsidy or whether that be the opportunity to access maybe a sector-specific grant that would support hiring and getting opportunity, working with local agencies and what are they doing to plan and support new employment. So if you're an individual looking for work, it'd be an okay question to ask your agency. Is there opportunity in the new economy from the pandemic's perspective? How and could I join to that? Are my skills able to fit the jobs that are being asked for? So those are the kind of things that individuals should look at their agencies and say, is there a change here? Could I look at something different? Again, MentorAbility and mentorship. I'm happy to speak today on behalf of CASE and the MentorAbility program, but a mentorship opportunity is a great way to figure out what it is you want to do. And the MentorAbility program, working in a number of provinces, gives you that opportunity. But you need to develop strategies to identify jobs that fit the skill of the individual, particularly as we respond to home employment. If somebody's going to work from home, they need to have the skills that the employer is asking for. Very often in supported employment, it's a place then train model because we want the individual to gain experience and the confidence. When we're talking about working with strategies to identify at-home work or out of the office work, we need to ensure that the individual has the skills to complete the job or the tools to ensure that it's completed. So it's about the skill identification and the support to the individual so that they can have the tools they need to make sure that the job is done and that they have the skills before they start the job. So that brings us around to better job matching. It's really critical for those service providers today to not only understand the meanings of job descriptions, but to read between the lines, to actually maybe contact the employer. And if they're agreeable, pop in and see the job. What does it look like? What are the environmental factors? Maybe the job ad doesn't tell you everything that you need to know in order to make the best match possible. So it's having that information, and that's what's important here after the pandemic. Information about both the opportunities, but what are going to be the challenges of that job, also as it relates to the pandemic. So I wanted to talk about a little bit about resumes because so many people are looking for work. People are sending out resumes everywhere. And I always get this question that asks, Sean, my resume. Well, look, are you missing anything on your resume? What skills don't you have there? Have you not identified some additional hidden skills? During this time, it's a great opportunity to reflect and maybe do a skills inventory. One of the things that many folks could do, if you're looking for work, ask others what they think you are good at. It's a real opportunity to see how other people identify your skills. You may think you're good at one thing, but you never would have thought that somebody said, well, I think you're great at doing X, Y, or Z. So it's looking and finding those little hidden skills that give you that one extra skill to put on your resume, that one extra opportunity to identify how your skill relates to the job that you're applying for. A resume is a picture of a particular day, everybody. Does not define you, nor should it limit you. I know so many people who would live and die by their resume. And what I say to people is that it is just a picture of that day. And you are so much more, and you have so many more facets and skills than what's represented on your resume. And I'm going to tell you a story here. These two pictures here are of a garment factory in Bangladesh that I've worked with for a couple of years. And I was doing some work, and I met this young lady who had paralysis in her right hand, and she had never had a job before. And so I'm meeting with her, and I'm talking to her about, what kind of things do you like to do at home? And now culturally, it's very different. So she wasn't allowed out a lot. She didn't have a lot of friends. She had low numerical skills and low literacy, and really felt shame about having this disability identified by her hand. And so we were chatting for a little while, and I asked her what she kind of did on the weekends. And so I'm trying to have an established rapport with this individual, because they're very nervous talking to somebody about work and an opportunity. And so I'm always fascinated, because culturally it's very different. And I said to her, I said, that's a beautiful sari, the traditional wear in India and Bangladesh. And she said to me, yes, she said, thank you very much. She said, I made this. And I said, I beg your pardon? This was a very intricate dress that had stones, that had bright colors, impeccably made and sewn. And I said to her, I said, I've been talking to you for an hour, and you never said anything about your ability to sew. Well, she said, it's not formal, Sean. She said, I just do it at home. She said, I make all of my family's clothes. I said, wow. And I said, so what kind of job do you want? She said, well, I'd like to sew, she said, but I don't know anybody who'd let me. And I said, well, if they saw your clothes. So what we did was we got her a job at a garment factory. We got her a leather glove with a tennis ball in it. And she was able to stretch the fabric better than she had at home. And she worked at the garment factory. She supported her family. She got social. She met new people. Her life was changed. But it wouldn't have been changed unless we looked for that hidden skill and identified it and matched it with the need of the employer. So those are really important pieces that a conversation can lead you down a path with folks where they're going to expose a skill that they didn't even realize they had. There are some business truths that we have to remember. Businesses are in business to make money. They are not in business to employ people. If every business in this world could operate without any employees and still make money, they would. Employees are an expense. Expenses take away from the bottom line. Businesses are in business to make money. Business managers and owners are busy. They don't have time from their perspective to look at HR planning. So your value has just increased exponentially, because you can support employers to not only find diversity and build it, but demonstrate to them how that diversity builds innovation and profitability. You become the HR person that they go to help. You are the one that goes and answers their questions and supports them, because you want to educate them. Because one of the things we've learned is that when an employer hires somebody of a diverse background, very often it won't be the last hire. They recognize the value of having somebody with a different experience solving problems, because they see the problem differently. They want to hire, diversify, and include. They really do, but they don't know how. They're terrified they're going to do the wrong thing. They're going to say the wrong thing. It's the job of agencies to help educate the employer, but also not chastise them for not being fully immersed in the language and the culture that we eat, live, breathe, drink every day. We often say to individuals when they may say a word that may not be used anymore, we'll often say to an employer, I understand that that's historically the word we've used, but today this is how we refer to people. We don't want to chastise the employer. They don't have the same education that we do, and we want to provide an opportunity for learning, not for criticism. They really want to be successful. That's why people go into business. So if you're supporting that goal as an agency, then that's what they are looking for. That's why they could support your agency in helping hire people. And again, I finish with businesses are in business to make money. That's why they're open. That's why people struggle and give their heart and soul to their business, is because they want to be successful. They want to make money. You know, talking about diversity and inclusion can be a challenge. People are afraid. People are unsure. It's not something they always understand. And maybe it's more around what they're uncomfortable with. Because people with disabilities or new Canadians or older folks, they're comfortable with who they are. It's the other people who struggle with acknowledging that maybe you had a different upbringing, you grew up in a different country, you come to work from a different way. Those things don't affect your ability to do a job, but from a society's point of view, we're always looking to group ourselves with people we feel are identified like ourselves. And that's where we have to push ourselves out of those boundaries and across those lines. But we also have to talk about return on investment. So when you're pitching to an employer that a diverse workforce is important, they're often going to come back and say, I don't understand. What do you mean? Well, it's good for business. How? Increase productivity rates. Well, how do you prove that, Sean? Well, I can tell you that individuals with disabilities are just as productive as other individuals given the tools to do the job. What we've also found is that when working from home, people are more productive. They're able to get more done. So overall, they're looking for solutions. And so maybe they're finding new ways to do their job, and that's increasing productivity. Let's remember, folks with disabilities look at the world differently because every day there are multitudes of barriers put up in front of them for something as simple as going to the store to get milk. And if you're able to solve those problems and make those things happen, then that's where innovation and new thinking comes from. We have to have new solutions to old problems. And that only comes from getting somebody new with a new experience to help solve that problem because they don't see it the same way. So reduce turnover. I want to put this out there because everybody says to me, oh, that's because people with disabilities are so grateful to have a job. No, it's because workplaces that are innovative and diverse keep employees, disability or not. If you're being accomplished at work, you're solving problems, you're appreciated, you're supported, you're accommodated, you're included. Those are people who don't leave. So this isn't about, I'm so grateful to have a job, thank you for hiring me. It's about the overall culture at the workplace. So reduced turnover from a diverse workforce is a benefit. And it's also a positive consumer perception. I want to shop at places that look like the community and reflect the community that I live in. Tall, short, big, small, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, white, black, everything. I want it to look like the community that we want to be in as well. So, you know, and businesses are getting better at this. In particular, Walmart. If you live in a predominantly Latino network, the people who work at the Walmart will be Latino. The first language spoken on American Airlines in Miami is Spanish, not French, not English, right? So they're catering to their customers. So they have a positive perception among Latinos because in Miami, the people at American Airlines will speak to you in the language that you understand. So whether that's a new person, I'll give you an example from work. I live in Newfoundland, not Disneyland, as I tell people. And I've worked in Southeast Asia for a number of years. And one of the challenges is language. So we had this young man come to the office and he, Zubair. And Zubair is from Pakistan and he only speaks Urdu. I want to remind you, Zubair lives in Newfoundland, only speaks Urdu and has a number of challenges that he's addressing. Where are we going to find him a job? How are we going to find him a job? Who speaks Urdu? And one of the ladies at our office, Christina, managed to make it all happen. Zubair works at PetSmart. He still only speaks Urdu. His coworker speaks English and Urdu. And people go and support PetSmart because it's a diverse employer. And they look for Zubair. And they appreciate how difficult and challenging it must be, but that he continues to do his job, enjoy his work, and is learning about being a fully Canadian by participating in employment. I mean, those are things, positive consumer perceptions. I will go to PetSmart just because they hired somebody who can't speak English. And innovative thinking, this is what I mentioned earlier. If we all look at a problem the same way, we're never going to solve it. When we hire somebody, we hire them for their experience. We hire them for their knowledge and problem-solving abilities. And as I mentioned, if you've got to get to work and it's going to take a challenge, you got to get a bus, you got to navigate streets, you might have a vision impairment, your ability to problem solve is greatly increased because it's something that you're doing every single day for the very basic necessities of life that the rest of the community doesn't have to navigate because the world is built for everybody else. And diversity is just not disability. We often get stuck in this area, and we need to make sure that to build our community, to build our brand of diversity, we need to make sure we look at it just not disability. We want to look at lifestyle, academics, culture, life stage. Maybe you're in mid-career, gender, race, experience, age. Disability crosses all of these. So we want to make sure it's not the disability, it's the diversity. We're always reflecting back on the skills that somebody brings to a workplace or the experiences they bring that will help us be more innovative. You know, there are barriers. We've got to let go of old mindsets, the corporate social responsibility of we'll hire one of them. No, thank you. One of them is not required. What we need is employers that want to hire qualified, able individuals who might get to work differently, who might use tools to do their job differently, but do the job all the same. We can't hire people out of pity. We have to have skills, identification, and those are the things that we're selling. Employees must be productive. I know it's not so much a challenge in some parts of Canada, but I remember I got some people a job in India, and 5 weeks later when I went back, they were still in the yard, and I said to the employer, how's it going? He said, well, they just sit in the yard all day because I'm afraid they'll hurt themselves. So employees must be productive. It must be a real job. The gauge for me is if I wouldn't do it, nobody I represent would. So let's keep that in mind. Workplace dynamics are important. And I talked about that from not only working at home, but if you are on a work site, it's important that everybody be treated equal and that the individual with the disability or the barrier not be excluded or exalted or this inspirational porn that we get. You know, somebody with a disability gets up on Wednesday to go to work. Let's celebrate that. No, that's Wednesday, right? Those things are where we lose sight of what people's true abilities are. The fact that my friend may use a cane or an adaptive tool to get to work doesn't make them any more special than me. It just makes them get to work differently. And all of the folks and my friends and colleagues with disabilities or barriers have always said the same thing. Celebrate me for my skill, not what you perceive for me to be able to overcome. And that's a really important point to remember. I wanted to put up this social story. I've become a big fan of social stories from one of my colleagues at work, Megan. We've been doing some work around autism, and during this pandemic, the ability to have people support their workplace policies around masks are really important. So for folks with autism, it's often really, and for people with other cognitive challenges, a great way to support them in understanding why the mask is necessary, what may be new at their workplace, and why it's important, and supporting them in understanding and building that knowledge. And so I'm a big proponent of using social stories to do that, to support people in other ways of learning, visual, so it's not always the ability to take in what you're saying, they can visually see it. So ladies and gentlemen, it may be the early bird that gets the worm, but it's the second mouse that gets the cheese. You don't always have to be first to win. If you enjoyed my presentation, my name is Sean Wiltshire. If you didn't, my name is Anthony Robbins, and I don't know who any of you people are. That's it, Ashley, for me.
Sean, thank you so much for joining today.
You're welcome.
I feel like on behalf of all of us, we've all been challenged both professionally and personally with with the challenges that COVID-19 has brought us, right? But by having a look at the statistics, the facts that you presented with us today, and also just taking a step back and saying, hey, now, let's wait, let's see what we do have. Think about the skills we're already developing just from the challenges we are faced with and the challenges that our clients are faced with, how they overcome. That's going to lead the workforce for not just right now, but also the future. So I think it's great.
We have to look at too, as for agencies, it's not that you can pandemic proof anybody's job,
Right.
but you could look at employment and say to yourself, if we have a second or third wave, how pandemic proof is the job? Is it an essential service? Can the job be done from home? Should that be set up before? So it's a new way of looking at things, but getting a job was always a challenge. If folks with disabilities could have got a job before, they would have. They're accomplished people.
Exactly.
It's everybody else who's putting up the barrier.
Exactly.
So, what service agencies do, what individuals do, is we've got to get better at selling ourselves. And it's not because I use a wheelchair. It's because I have the skill that you're looking for. And finding those hidden skills and that ability to be both supported and accommodated in your job, those are the things that people are looking for. And that's how problems are solved. We don't solve problems at our office by everybody individually thinking about a solution. We try to come together, and everybody's life experience, whether that be, the woman, the man, the trans, the individual who's a new Canadian, the First Nations individual, everybody's experience are going to help us move forward out of this.
Absolutely.
We can't look at it as a single solution, and we can't look at it like 500 jobs, one job, one person at a time, because we've got to consider the individual. If you want a successful job match, then it's about the individual being supported so that their skills are highlighted and they excel at the opportunity that you're supporting them with.
Mm-hmm, for sure. So guys, that pretty much concludes our webinar for today. Is there any other questions that you'd like to ask either myself or Sean while we're all here? I'm just having a look at the chat box here. You feel free to type your questions.
My lovely trailer.
A lot of people are saying thank you, Sean. It was a great presentation, very informative. They learned a lot.
I'm delighted to see all you folks, and I really will miss a lot of you at the CASE conference, but I wanted to remind you that next year, hopefully, the World Conference will be in Vancouver. CASE is the sponsoring agency. The board has been working really, really hard on, addressing some of the issues. So hopefully we'll have a vaccine and we'll be able to go ahead and bring the world to Canada to learn how we're doing supported employment here. Probably better than anywhere else in the country, anywhere else in the world.
So a couple of people are asking if the recording will be available. It certainly will be available. So we are actually going to send the recording to a video editor to kind of just edit out the pauses, you know. But we will be releasing it, and we'll send a copy to everybody that attended today. And Sean, they're also asking if we can send a copy of your presentation as well. So I could probably get that from you later on and email it out. Okay, perfect. So I'll certainly follow up with everybody in a couple of weeks, give me a week or so. Or maybe even a couple of days, because it's still early this week, but I'll certainly send you out that information as well. And thank you very much, guys, for joining.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week and stay safe. Wash your hands.
Bye now, guys.